Looks like Ronna McDaniel is out at the Republican National Committee. Who's going to replace her? Nikki Haley? She just finished a none of the above in the Nevada primary, so probably not her. Also, Mollie Hemmingway absolutely schools Congress on 2020 election shenanigans. We're going to let you see all of her brilliant testimony. And the president's brain, it doesn't function properly. We'll give you the latest scary example of that. All that and a whole lot more coming up right now. It is Larry O'Connor here at Town Hall. You can call me Larry, and thanks for watching across all the Town Hall websites, including Town Hall and Hot Air and Red State and PJ Media and Bearing Arms and Twitchy. And I don't know, we might have bought another website in the last 5 minutes. So welcome to you guys too. Also, thanks for watching on our YouTube, on our Facebook, or whatever social media platform you're watching on. Please like and subscribe and follow us and get alerts from YouTube, by the way. So I love that you guys hit the little alert button, the bell button, when you subscribe on YouTube, because it forces Google and YouTube to text you and let you know we've got a new episode. How great is it to make them work for you? It's about time, right? Yesterday, Joe Biden went to the White House and gave a very brief press announcement. He took a couple of questions, but it wasn't really a press conference. And it was really just to blame Donald Trump, believe it or not, for the border crisis and border chaos. It's an outrageous lie, and he's going to try to get away with it. But what was most disconcerting about this appearance was a moment where he was talking about the terrorist attacks in Israel at the hands of Gaza. He was asked by a reporter if there's been any progress in negotiating to get the hostages free. And watch the president's brain disintegrate before your very eyes.
There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top. We're not sure where it is. There's a continuing negotiation right now.
This is terrifying. I mean, honestly, it is terrifying because it's not like he's talking about some tax deal or, proclaiming Transgender Men in Medical Sciences Day with a proclamation and a certificate and a big White House lawn party. No, he's talking about negotiating with terrorists to release hostages after they've slaughtered over 1,000 innocent people. Terrorists, by the way, who are funded through Iran by his own administration. He's talking about the highest level of dangerous national security and foreign policy negotiations, and he can't even form a full sentence. He forgot the name of the terrorists he's negotiating with. It took a reporter, by the way, to bail him out. Do you like that part? A reporter's God, we got to help this guy out. We can't have Trump back here. Sir, do you mean Hamas? Yeah, Hamas. Thank you. Because, in his mind, he's like, oh, let's see. I'm dealing with the opposition, as he called them. I'm dealing with the opposition. They're terrorists. They're horrible. They're murderers. Yeah, MAGA Republicans. You know who I'm talking about, right? That's probably what was going on in the little hamster wheel running in the wheel that's in his brain right now. Can we watch this again, please? Because it needs to be reiterated how bad this is, how terrifying this is, and that there's nobody around the president in the White House, in his family, in his political party, who's willing to walk through the door, tap him on the shoulder, and say, Joe, you're done. Don't we deserve better than this? Let's watch again.
There is some movement, and I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition.
I think it's understandable if a normal American watches this and they think about a man in their life, either their father or their uncle or their grandfather or their great-grandfather at some point in your life where you've seen this kind of cognitive deterioration. and your heart goes out to him. You start to feel sorry for him. I get that. That's a normal human emotion. It's an understandable, compassionate response. Part of me feels that way. And then part of me remembers how mean and spiteful this human being is, how manipulative and divisive he's been his entire sad, lamentable political career. I think about the family of Robert Bork and how he treated them during his confirmation hearings back in the 80s. I think about Clarence Thomas and his wife, Ginny Thomas, and their family and what he put them through during those horrific hearings in the early 90s. I think about how he has treated anyone who has opposed him politically. I think about how he thinks about you and me right now for not supporting him and not wanting to vote for him. The fact that he thinks that we're insurrectionists and terrorists. Suddenly I stop feeling so compassionate for him. On a human level, yes. On an intellectual level and political level, absolutely not. Now, this, of course, comes just days after another terrifying moment, this time in an appearance in Las Vegas. We showed this to you yesterday when he mistook the president of France. First, he thought that it was the chancellor of Germany, then remembered it was the president of France, but then he called him Francois Mitterrand, a man who's been dead for 30 years.
Right after I was elected, I went to what they call a G7 meeting, all the NATO leaders. And it was in the south of England. And I sat down and I said, "America's back." And Mitterrand from France looked at me and said, how long are you back for?
I mean, first of all, nobody believes this story even happened, but he can't even remember the made up lines of the pretend French president in the story that they invented. And one has to wonder, does he think that President Macron is actually named Mitterrand? Does he think that President Mitterrand is, in fact, the president of France right now, and he doesn't even know who Macron is? Or does he think that he literally had a conversation with a man who is dead? And I think by asking all of those questions, you realize once again why there is no way this man is equipped to run a presidential campaign, let alone debate against his presidential opponent. And everyone's like, well, he can't run the campaign. He can't debate. Dude, he's running the country right now. He's in charge of our armed forces. He has the nuclear codes and can press the little red button. Everyone's worried about him debating and running a presidential campaign. How about actually being president? Because that's his job right now. Meanwhile, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked by Peter Doocy in the press briefing yesterday about that Mitterrand moment. Does the president think that Francois Mitterrand is still alive? Does he think he had a conversation with a dead man?
How is President Biden ever going to convince the 3/4 of voters who are worried about his physical and mental health that he is okay, even though in Las Vegas he told a story about recently talking to a French president who died in 1996?
I'm not even going to go down that rabbit hole with you,
What?
sir.
What is
We're
the
going to go.
rabbit hole?
Go ahead.
He said
Go
he
ahead.
talked to Mitterrand.
Go ahead. You saw the president in Vegas, in California. You've seen the president in South Carolina. You saw him in Michigan. I'll just leave it there. Go ahead.
Wow. You know what? This is great. Republican press secretaries from this point forward can just do this. Anytime they're asked a question about the president that is politically, uncomfortable or hard to deal with, just feign outrage. I won't even dignify that with an answer, sir. I won't go down that rabbit hole with you, sir. How dare you, sir? I say, how dare you? What is this? Are you kidding me? I'm not going to go. It's a legitimate question. The majority of American people right now, based on poll after poll after poll, says that they don't believe Joe Biden has the mental capacity and wherewithal to be president of the United States for 4 more years. And then he does something like that to reinforce it. Peter Doocy says, how are you going to convince everyone he's okay when he thinks he just talked to a dead man? And her entire response is, how dare you, sir? How dare you? Leave the room at once. No one's buying that, are they? What was that one part where she said, you saw the president in Las Vegas, you saw the president in California, you saw the president in South Carolina. Yeah, Karine Jean-Pierre, you're right. We just saw him yesterday right here in Washington, D.C.
And I don't want to, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas.
Yeah, okay, Karine Jean-Pierre. If that's going to be your response, if that's going to be the entire strategy you've got in dealing with this question, to just say, "Hey, you saw the president, you saw him in California, you saw him, yep, we saw him, all right, we saw him, you just saw him too." A little bit more, by the way, yesterday from Karine Jean-Pierre, fielding questions about the president.
Anything specifically on why you're not doing the Super Bowl interview? I mean, that's a massive audience in an election year of people who may not be tuned into this White House or this election at this moment.
So look, as you know, Super Bowl is a great annual tradition. Look, the president President Biden looks forward to watching the game this Sunday, just like millions of, as you just stated, just like millions of Americans are going to be doing that. And look, we hope that the viewers who tuned in, we know that the viewers who tuned in, they tuned in to watch the game, right? And so obviously, that is just a fact. They want to see the game. They want to see their favorite team. They want to see a halftime show. That is what it's that type of tradition. The president will find many other ways to communicate with Americans, the millions of Americans out there, and we will find those ways to do it where we think the time is right.
The way she's stammering through these press conferences, whatever Biden has between his ears, I think it might be contagious. But that's a hell of a message right there. Is there another reason why maybe you could share with us the president has decided not to take a softball interview at halftime in the Super Bowl when you've got the largest television audience at any given time the entire year when he's running a presidential campaign? Seems like a weird political decision. What do you say, Karine Jean-Pierre? People just want to watch the game. They're not interested in this sort of thing. Can I just let you know that the president has been president for 2 Super Bowls so far. In 3 Super Bowls, 21, 22, and 23. Now, this is the 4th Super Bowl that he's president, 2024. He did give the interview the first 2 years, 21 and 22. He refused last year, and now he's refusing again this year. So I guess by Karine Jean-Pierre's logic, by the Biden White House's logic, Joe Biden was wrong to have done this interview in 21 and 22 because people don't care and they just want to watch the game. Are you buying that one? In fact, that would have been a really good follow-up there, lady reporter at the White House. I'm sorry, you're saying that the American people just want to watch the game. Well, then what's your excuse for doing the interview for 2 years back in 21 and 22? But I think we all know the hidden message that Karine Jean-Pierre and Joe Biden and the White House is sending here. You saw it, right? You read between the lines. We're not going to do that interview at the Super Bowl because people are tuning in. Football fans want to watch the game. They care about football and they want to watch football and nothing else. The clear message is Joe Biden hates Taylor Swift. Yesterday, we talked about the media meltdown over Tucker Carlson doing a whole lot of journalisming over there in Moscow. I mean, I don't know why it's so outrageous or controversial when a journalist who is known for interviewing people actually goes and interviews a pretty big name in the news, Vladimir Putin, the president of Russia. In fact, why is it Xi Jinping is interviewed by major media outlets and no one bats an eye? I mean, the guy's responsible for genocide and slave labor and, well, communism in general and cheating at the Olympics too. But set that aside for a moment. It's reached a new level of crazy now, as apparently the EU is thinking of putting sanctions against Tucker Carlson, against him personally, for being a reporter, for doing his job. Here's Newsweek. They've got the story, and it says, as you can see here, Carlson's work in Russia. I love that phraseology. Like he's going to work in Russia on behalf of Russia. He's getting an interview, for God's sake. Carlson's work in Russia could see the former Fox News host in hot water with the EU. Guy Verhofstadt, a former Belgian prime minister and current member of the European Parliament, told Newsweek that the lawmaker who has called for the EU to explore imposing a travel ban on Carlson described Carlson as a mouthpiece of former President Donald Trump Why are they dragging Trump into this? That's fascinating, isn't it? And Putin, adding, quote, as Putin is a war criminal and the EU sanctions all who assist him in that effort, it seems logical that the External Action Service examine his case as well. Boy, it makes the whole Brexit thing seem that much more sane, rational, and logical, doesn't it, when you've got the EU doing things like this? Let's break this down for a second. And then we have the benefit of actually hearing from Tucker Carlson himself as he posted a video explaining firsthand why he's there to interview Vladimir Putin. But this is a fascinating Orwellian authoritarian move by the EU. He's a mouthpiece for President Trump and Putin. I've watched Tucker Carlson for years, and he's had a lot of criticism for Donald Trump, by the way, and doesn't actually support everything that Donald Trump tries to do. To call him a mouthpiece is, well, just a lie. But you see, if you're not 100% critical and don't condemn Donald Trump every opportunity you have, you're called a mouthpiece for Donald Trump. This is how the left thinks because, well, they're totalitarians. And then he says he's a mouthpiece for Vladimir Putin. So going and asking Vladimir Putin questions and getting him on the record, giving his opinion or stating his position on a whole host of matters internal to Russia, but also obviously on the international stage, asking him questions and getting him on the record and maybe even challenging him on some of the things that he said makes you a mouthpiece for Vladimir Putin. Is anyone terrified yet about free speech, the First Amendment, the freedom of the press? Where's all the champions of freedom of the press that we saw during the Trump years? Where's Jim Acosta standing up shoulder to shoulder with Tucker Carlson saying the man is doing his job as a reporter? Get out of his way. I'm not seeing them out there right now. Are you? Well, Tucker Carlson doesn't seem too worried about being sanctioned by the EU or a travel ban against him for that matter. In Moscow, he delivered a message to all the viewers of his network, the Tucker Carlson network, and to X, and to anyone out there who wants to know why would Tucker Carlson do this. Well, he answered that question directly.
We're in Moscow tonight. We're here to interview the president of Russia, Vladimir Putin. We'll be doing that soon. There are risks to conducting an interview like this, obviously, so we thought about it carefully over many months. Here's why we're doing it. First, because it's our job. We're in journalism. Our duty is to inform people. 2 years into a war that's reshaping the entire world, most Americans are not informed. They have no real idea what's happening in this region, here in Russia or 600 miles away in Ukraine. But they should know. They're paying for much of it in ways they might not fully yet perceive. The war in Ukraine is a human disaster. It's left hundreds of thousands of people dead, an entire generation of young Ukrainians, and it's depopulated the largest country in Europe. But the long-term effects are even more profound. This war has utterly reshaped the global military and trade alliances, and the sanctions that followed have as well. And in total, they have upended the world economy.
There's more to this, but up until this moment, is there anything that he said that's inaccurate? You may quibble with the causes behind what he just described in terms of where we are in the world economy and trade in the international sphere, but that's fine. He's just reporting the actualities, the facts of what's going on right now. And as you watch the rest of this, and listen, Tucker Carlson is an opinion journalist. There is such a thing as opinion journalists. I'm one of them, where you deliver information, you deliver facts, and then you deliver your opinion on those things. But you also, if you do it right, leave it up to your viewer or your reader or your listener to actually form their own opinion, right? Because we all have opinions. When you watch the rest of this video, and I won't interrupt him again, I want you to think to yourself, does this look like a man who's trying to convince me of something? Does this look like a man who is trying to change my mind about this war or about this issue? Does this look like a man who has an agenda and he's trying to deliver a message to me to make me agree with him? Or does he look like a man who is saying, listen, I think we've only had one side of the story, and you may not agree with the other side of the story, but since it's something as valuable and important and critical as war, maybe it's our responsibility to at least know the other side of the story.
The post-World War II economic order, the system that guaranteed prosperity in the West for more than 80 years, is coming apart very fast, and along with it, the dominance of the US dollar. These are not small changes. They are history-altering developments. They will define the lives of our grandchildren. Most of the world understands this perfectly well. They can see it. Ask anyone in Asia or the Middle East what the future looks like. And yet the populations of the English-speaking countries seem mostly unaware. They think that as nothing has really changed. And they think that because no one has told them the truth. Their media outlets are corrupt. They lie to their readers and viewers. And they do that mostly by omission. For example, since the day the war in Ukraine began, American media outlets have spoken to scores of people from Ukraine, and they have done scores of interviews with Ukrainian President Zelensky. We ourselves have put in a request for an interview with Zelensky, and we hope he accepts. But the interviews he's already done in the United States are not traditional interviews. They are fawning pep sessions specifically designed to amplify Zelensky's demand that the U.S. enter more deeply into a war in Eastern Europe and pay for it. That is not journalism. It is government propaganda. Propaganda of the ugliest kind, the kind that kills people. At the same time, our politicians and media outlets have been doing this, promoting a foreign leader like he's a new consumer brand. Not a single Western journalist has bothered to interview the president of the other country involved in this conflict, Vladimir Putin. Most Americans have no idea why Putin invaded Ukraine or what his goals are now. They've never heard his voice. That's wrong. Americans have a right to know all they can about a war they're implicated in, and we have the right to tell them about it because we are Americans too. Freedom of speech is our birthright. We were born with the right to say what we believe. That right cannot be taken away no matter who is in the White House. But they're trying anyway. Almost 3 years ago, the Biden administration illegally spied on our text messages and then leaked the contents to their servants in the news media. They did this in order to stop a Putin interview that we were planning. Last month, we're pretty certain they did exactly the same thing once again. But this time, we came to Moscow anyway. We are not here because we love Vladimir Putin. We are here because we love the United States, and we want it to remain prosperous and free. We paid for this trip ourselves. We took no money from any government or group, nor are we charging people to see the interview. It is not behind a paywall. Anyone can watch the entire thing, shot live to tape and unedited, on our website, tuckercarlson.com. Elon Musk, to his great credit, has promised not to suppress or block this interview once we post it on his platform, X, and we're grateful for that. Western governments, by contrast, will certainly do their best to censor this video on other less principled platforms because that's what they do. They are afraid of information they can't control. But you have no reason to be afraid of it. We are not encouraging you to agree with what Putin may say in this interview, but we are urging you to watch it. You should know as much as you can. And then, like a free citizen and not a slave, you can decide for yourself. Thanks.
Kind of refreshing, actually, isn't it? And I just want to reiterate, I support Tucker Carlson as a journalist, making a journalistic endeavor to better inform the people of this country and really the entire English-speaking world about a critically important issue. By the way, I don't know if I agree with Tucker Carlson about his position on Russia. I don't even know Tucker Carlson's entire position on Russia. I don't think I need to know Tucker Carlson's entire position on Russia. And I certainly, when push comes to shove, I'm not on the side of Vladimir Putin, who is obviously the aggressor in this entire war. But I'm also not an idiot. And when you see countries trying to suppress information and suppress the media, when you see the entire European Union threatening to attack Tucker Carlson and ban him from traveling to the continent because he's conducting an interview, when you see media outlets in America calling for Tucker Carlson to be arrested or kept from entering the country, which, by the way, I'm thrilled that there are people in the media who have finally decided that there's someone out there outside of our borders who shouldn't be let in. It's just sad that it's a fellow journalist, Tucker Carlson. When you see that kind of reaction, and then what Tucker said the Biden administration did to him, well, then one must wonder what the hell this is all about. And every American who sees that, every single freedom-loving American seeing the full court press against Tucker Carlson in this interview, every single one of us should now demand to see what the government and corporations and foreign powers refuse to allow you to see. That's the American way, isn't it? And by the way, that last mention there of Elon Musk made the mortal sin of promising not to block or suppress this interview on X, and now he is facing criticism about that. Here's someone named Caroline Orr Bueno, if that's her real name. She has PhD in her handle too. That's always a suspicious move, isn't it? She calls herself a behavioral scientist in her postdoctorate career at a University of Maryland. That tells you everything. And she's studying disinformation and cognitive security. Wow, she's got to be a party. She says, that's interesting, Elon Musk was involved in the planning of Tucker Carlson's interview of Putin. Whoa. Full stop here. What do you mean involved in the planning? Tucker Carlson just said that nobody's paying for him to be there. No group, no government. They paid for it themselves. They went there. They got the interview. All he said was, Elon, he picked up the phone and said, hey, Elon, I'm interviewing Vladimir Putin. I'm going to put it on my website. I'd like to put it on X. Will you promise not to block it or suppress it? Elon Musk says, yes, I will not block it or suppress it. So Elon Musk was involved in the planning of this thing. God, these people are awful. He likely agreed to the arrangement because of the viewers it'll bring in. So he's using his platform to sell airtime to a war criminal who wants to undermine our country. I'm guessing Caroline Orr Bueno, PhD, is referring to Vladimir Putin there, not Tucker Carlson. But hey, honestly, you never know. Adam Schiff, congressman from California running for Senate in that state, flagged the video of Tucker Carlson and said there are idiots and useful idiots and really, really useful idiots and Tucker Carlson. This is Adam Schiff calling Tucker Carlson a really, really useful idiot. Adam Schiff, the man who sat in front of cameras all across the media sphere, claiming that he had seen direct evidence that Donald Trump had colluded with the Russian government to steal the 2016 election. He lied left and right, up and down. He was, in fact, a useful idiot for Hillary Clinton, for the Democratic Committee, for Robert Mueller, for anybody who opposed Donald Trump, for anyone who stood in the way of the Trump administration actually functioning as the executive branch of government, and lied and lied and lied over and over again. And he's calling Tucker Carlson a useful idiot. Well, I mean, at least he's an expert in this arena. And a lot of people are flagging the fact that other media outlets right up until 2021, which was only 3 years ago, had actually gladly interviewed Vladimir Putin. Yesterday, we showed you pictures of George Stephanopoulos and Charlie Rose and Barbara Walters all sitting down with Vladimir Putin over the years. And there was this last interview from NBC News where they sat with Vladimir Putin, 2021. It's about an hour and 20 minutes long. It's out there if you want to watch the whole thing. But this clip really does resonate when you look at the political tides in this country today, how the news media has become propagandist, and in answering the question as to why they're so upset that Tucker Carlson is doing this thing.
May I just ask you a direct question? Did you order Alexei Navalny's assassination?
Of course not. We don't have this kind of habit of assassinating anybody. That's one. Number two is, I want to ask you, did you order the assassination of the woman who walked into the Congress and who was shot and killed by a policeman? Do you know that 450 individuals were arrested after entering the Congress, and they didn't go there to steal a laptop? They came with political demands. 450 people have been detained.
You're talking about the capital.
They're looking at jail time between 15 and 25 years. And they came to the Congress with political demands. Isn't that persecution for political opinions?
You know, it's almost like the American government has lost the moral high ground internationally in accusing other countries of suppressing political opposition and using the judicial system to silence political critics of the current government or the current president. It's almost like we've actually lost the opportunity to criticize other governments because of our own actions. Almost in the same way we've lost the moral high ground when it comes to showing third world nations and banana republics how to conduct an election fairly without any sort of fraud or cheating. Now, one other thing that needs to be noted, that NBC News reporter that sat for an hour and 20 minutes with Vladimir Putin and broadcast exclusively there on NBC News, was he a puppet? Was he a mouthpiece for Vladimir Putin? Did the EU actually want to send sanctions against him and give him a travel ban from the continent? He conducted an interview. He gave Vladimir Putin a platform to deny that he ordered the assassination of his political opponents. He's a puppet for Vladimir Putin. You know, you didn't hear that, did they? You didn't hear that. Again, we aren't on the side of Vladimir Putin in any way whatsoever. We're interested in seeing the interview. We're interested in being educated. We're interested in gathering more information. And we'll be watching Tucker Carlson's interview. It's going to be released tomorrow night around 6 p.m. Eastern. And I'm sure we'll have plenty to say about it the next morning. But let me just leave you with this. You know, anytime there's a controversial issue like this, whether it's an interview or a news program or a viral video or even a movie or a speech that you might see from a political figure, and one side of the political equation wants to suppress all that information, wants to keep it from you, wants to condemn anyone who would platform it. They want to shut down accounts, you know, like a article in the New York Post about the son of a man running for president. You know, one side wants to delete all that information and keep you from seeing it. And the other side might not even agree with it, but at the very least, they just want a free and open space. You know, the solution to the problems in this country is not to have less free speech. It's to have more of it. When you're faced with that choice, I beg you, always side with the people who are interested in keeping the flow of information going. The people who want more speech, not less. Usually, those are the good guys. Poll after poll after poll of the American people confirm that the number one issue that matters most to them is the chaos, the catastrophe, the crisis at our southern border, with millions and millions and millions of people from all over the world crossing into this country illegally, many of them claiming asylum, but they won't get a hearing as to whether they have a legitimate call for asylum for into the 2030s at this point. It's a nightmare, and it's all a nightmare of President Biden and his administration's making. That's why, finally, when Republicans in Congress have something specific that they can do about it, impeaching Alejandro Mayorkas, the Secretary of Homeland Security, all eyes were with anticipation on that vote yesterday. And here's how it ended.
On this vote, the yeas are 214 and the nays are 216. The resolution is not adopted.
Speaker Mike Johnson looking none too pleased about that, and he has every reason to be angry. Yeah, they lost. They wanted to move forward with an impeachment, and they lost really by one vote. I know it showed by two, but it was tied 215 to 215, and that deadlock was not going anywhere. Let's tell you how the votes broke down here. Greg Price, our pal, actually had it. The three Republicans that voted no were Mike Gallagher in Wisconsin, Ken Buck in Colorado, and Tom McClintock in California. Tom McClintock, by the way, a pretty great constitutional Republican. His reasoning here was that he wanted to stop the idea of impeachment being used as just a scurrilous political weapon, like it had been used against Donald Trump. He thinks that whatever Alejandro Mayorkas did, it didn't rise to the level of impeachment, high crimes, misdemeanors. And it's wrong that every Congress that comes in starts using impeachment as a weapon. And I get that. I think that the man is principled. But at the same time, we can't unilaterally disarm Congressman McClintock. We've just seen the House of Representatives run by the Democrats use impeachment in just that manner. And sorry, we've gone past the point of playing by the rules that we'd like them to be. We have to play with the rules as they are right now. And we have seen an existential crisis in this country over impeachment, or excuse me, over the illegal immigration and the invasion that we've seen on our southern border. And Tom McClintock's a Californian. He knows that better than anyone. Mike Gallagher of Wisconsin has been a no on this for quite some time. He told Hugh Hewitt, our colleague on Salem Radio earlier this morning, that it's been, a month and he hasn't changed his position, as Steve Scalise, the majority whip, has been reaching out to him and trying to figure out where his vote was. So they knew that he was going to be a no on this. Ken Buck in Colorado, I can only assume that he thought that impeaching Mayorkas would help Donald Trump. And Ken Buck's entire political perspective right now is to do whatever it takes to not help Donald Trump. So that's how this shook down. And by the way, if you're doing the math, that's a 215 to 215 tie. So why did it end up 216 to 214? Who was that last Republican who flipped his vote against impeachment? We'll get the breakdown here from Fox News, and it will all seem quite clear in a moment.
Now, I mentioned that Blake Moore, the Republican from Utah, he moved to reconsider the vote. This is after he switched his vote from yes to no. The reason that's important is that this was going down at 215 to 215. By rule, a tie vote loses in the House of Representatives. So why would Blake Moore, who's now the vice chair of the Republican conference, who wants to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas, switch his vote to no? Well, if you just have a straight vote, a tie vote here, it's off the table. It's done. Fiend, 30. But if you switch your vote to the prevailing side, in this case, the noes, so Blake Moore, member of the leadership, switches his vote to the prevailing side, the noes, they are able to recall this vote at some point. Maybe not tonight, maybe not in the next few days, maybe when they get Steve Scalise, the majority leader, back, maybe if they win that special election on Long Island next week, if they win, they might have the votes to impeach. So Blake Moore is not necessarily against impeachment, but what he did is he switched so he was on the prevailing side. They didn't have the votes. Otherwise, this was a done deal at 215 to 215.
Yeah, so it was a parliamentary procedure, by the way. Chad Pegram there from Fox News with a great explanation. So now you can understand why it went the way it did. And yes, Steve Scalise, the majority whip, he is undergoing cancer treatment. He was unable to be there for the vote. And then you heard mention of this open seat right now in Long Island, where they're going to have a special election to figure out exactly whether the Republicans can add one more seat to their very slim majority or not. That's why it was 215, 215. If they had a Republican in that New York House seat right now, this thing would have gone properly and Mayorkas would face impeachment right now. And who did that seat belong to? This guy, George Santos. He tweeted out the picture of the deadlock, 215 to 215. And he asked very simply, miss me yet? Because you see, George Santos has been expelled from the House of Representatives. George Santos, who even said he wasn't going to run for re-election this November, so he was just going to be there for the one term. George Santos, who became a media anomaly, I guess is the best word to use. I mean, the media was absolutely transfixed on this guy about past things that he said and supposed lies that he delivered during the campaign, because, you know, politicians never lie when they're running for office. He became a pariah and he became a cause celeb for the liberal medias in D.C. They demanded that he be thrown out of office. And of course, Republicans acquiesced. Republicans who only had a 4-seat majority decided to kill George Santos from the majority and leave that seat open. By the way, Kevin McCarthy, who they took the gavel away from in the fall, he left the House of Representatives too, leaving that seat open. So that's why they have such a slim majority. And boy, in retrospect, it sure seems pretty stupid for the Republicans to go out of their way to make Democrats and CNN happy by kicking George Santos out. I mean, really, what's more important, guys? Making sure you're on the right side of history when it comes to the George Santos question? Or sending a clear message to the American people that you are on their side when it comes to the southern border invasion? Now this is seen as some kind of victory for Alejandro Mayorkas and for the Biden administration and the open borders policy. And let me just be really clear here, because it seems like people are confused about the basics in this case. You know, Alejandro Mayorkas was not being impeached because he's so ineffective on our southern border. He's not being impeached because he's carrying out a disastrous policy of the president of the United States to basically allow anyone, and I mean literally anyone from around the world, enter this country illegally and stay for as long as they'd like. That's actually not why he was being impeached. And I hope Tom McClintock, who is standing on principle and is a strict constitutionalist and wanting to protect the integrity of the impeachment process, I hope he's listening. I hope Congressman Gallagher from Wisconsin is listening too. Ken Buck is a lost cause. I hope you're listening. The reason Mayorkas is being impeached is because he came before you, members of the House of Representatives, at a Homeland Security hearing. He swore to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. He looked you in the eyes and he said, the border is secure. And the border is not secure. And he knew the border was not secure. And the president of the United States, his boss, has been spending the last several weeks trying to take back the issue of the border for political purposes. And he himself is now saying that the border is not secure. Joe Biden is saying that the border is in chaos. Of course, he's blaming Republicans for it, laughably. But isn't it obvious that Alejandro Mayorkas lied under oath to Congress? And if you're not going to take that seriously and move to impeach the man for his bald-faced lies under oath to you, then what's the point of even swearing in witnesses at this point? Or for that matter, what's the point of having hearings? We're going to conduct a hearing now of the Homeland Security Committee, but everyone's probably just going to lie to us and we're not going to do anything about it. But let's have the hearing anyway. This is why people get so frustrated with Washington, D.C. It's why they get frustrated with the Republican Party. And it's also why they really want to shake things up. You know, after the 2016 election, when Donald Trump shocked the world and beat Hillary Clinton, I'll never forget the next morning when I started my radio program in Washington, D.C., the first words out of my mouth, the day after the election of Donald Trump, I said to my audience, now does everyone understand how pissed off we are? And frankly, I think we're even more pissed now. Meanwhile, over in the White House yesterday, Karine Jean-Pierre was asked about the border, asked about Alejandro Mayorkas, asked about this impeachment process.
So with the president saying today that the border is not secure and Secretary Mayrkas saying under oath to Congress that it is.
Here's what I will say. Secretary Mayrkas has done everything that he can do and to deal with what's going on at the border and to deal with the broken immigration, to the point where he was part of this negotiation process that we saw the Senate go through. The president has confidence in the secretary, and I think that's what matters.
That's not really an answer to the question, is it? And just to reiterate, the question was, the president is saying the border is not secure, and Alejandro Mayorkas said under oath that it is secure. So how do you square that up? And, well, basically, you just had the press secretary for the White House lying about the Mayorkas lie in the first place. But I guess that's what they do. And since we've learned now that there's no repercussions for their lies, they're just going to keep on doing it. A little bit more from Karine Jean-Pierre here.
President Biden said today that the immigration system has been broken and that he intends to drive home the message that, quote, the only reason the border is not secure is Donald Trump and his MAGA Republican friends. Secretary Mayorkas repeatedly said that the border is secure, and that's one of the reasons House Republicans are trying to impeach him. Did President Biden just confirm that Mayorkas gave Congress false information when he said that the border was secure?
I actually want to go back to your question. It's a ridiculous premise and a ridiculous statement that was made about this administration. So I just want to be very yes, I just want to be very, very clear. It's just ridiculous.
I want to go back and attack you personally. You're ridiculous for daring to say that we're inconsistent here. Did you notice she never actually addressed the actual direct issue here? All right. The president is blaming Republicans for so-called chaos in the border and saying that the border is not secure. Alejandro Mayorkas said under oath to Congress that the border was secure. Aren't you sort of proving that Alejandro Mayorkas lied under oath, which is the reason that he's being impeached? That reporter in the White House gets it and understands it more than the 3 Republicans who just refused to impeach Alejandro Mayorkas. But listen, again, I hate having a downer here. I hate having a whole segment where we're just outraged over the incompetence and the inability to get the basics done. But frankly, you should be outraged. You should be angry. And we'd love to hear your outrage and angry on the comments section below. Please do. But at the same time, do not lose hope. This is still an open issue, as we mentioned. And the fact that the vote went the way that it did, and it was still a motion was put forward to reconsider. It's a parliamentary thing, but it means that if Steve Scalise can return and vote on this after he gets his cancer treatments, and if we can win that House seat in Long Island, then we can move forward with a very slim majority and actually start the impeachment process of Mayorkas. So there's some hope there. It ain't done yet. I think that Speaker Johnson needs to address the fact that he brought this to the floor for a full vote without knowing for sure that he had all the votes that he needed. If he thought he had all those votes and somebody betrayed him, he should probably come forward and say something about that, because right now his leadership has been directly challenged and undermined before the American people in a very public way. And I trust Speaker Johnson, actually, and I trust that he'll actually fix this problem quickly. I sure hope he does. You'll remember a couple of months ago, we interviewed Ronna Romney McDaniel, the chairwoman of the RNC, in the spin room after the debate down in Miami, when she gave a very odd answer about the Virginia elections that had just taken place the day before. She claimed that she directed the RNC not to do anything for that state's elections, that there was no money given there. She claimed that Governor Glenn Youngkin demanded that the RNC stayed out of it, and that, well, that was disputed by a lot of people in Virginia. Didn't know exactly what she was talking about. That started a pretty downward news cycle for the chairwoman that included an expose by our very own Jennifer Van Laar at redstate.com. We had her on this program last week where she dove deep into the finances of the RNC and uncovered expenditures like $1.5 million on flowers and limousines instead of, get out the vote projects and voter registration campaigns and things that you would think the RNC was doing. This, by the way, at a time when the RNC has gone from having millions of dollars in the bank to having nothing in the bank. They're actually filing for a line of credit going into a presidential election year. That's not a good sign for Ronna McDaniel either. And plus, we also showed you Donald Trump in an interview this Sunday saying to Maria Bartiromo, it might be time to make a change here with Ronna McDaniel as the chairwoman of the RNC. We lay all of that out there for you to let you know that late yesterday afternoon, the New York Times reported that anonymous sources are saying that Ronna McDaniel will, in fact, be resigning soon as the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. Donald Trump is likely to back an election denier to replace her. You gotta love the New York Times. Never change, guys. Never, ever change. Regardless of who Donald Trump decides, and until he actually becomes the de facto nominee, and mathematically he's not quite there yet. There's only been 2 primaries so far in the build up to the Republican nomination. But when he is the presumptive nominee, then he will, in fact, have the power to be able to choose who the chairperson of the RNC is. Historically, that's always been what happens in a presidential election year. So he'll choose someone, and we can speculate as to who that might be. I mean, maybe I'm completely out to lunch here, but could this be a way of sort of taking care of Nikki Haley, giving her something to do and getting her off the stage once and for all? A lot of people have suggested that. It's like, oh, this is perfect. Get rid of Ronna McDaniel and throw Nikki Haley over there as the chairwoman of the RNC. And up until yesterday, it may have made a lot of sense. But now I don't think it does. Nikki Haley actually participated in the Nevada primary. Now, this is a little inside baseball, but the Nevada primary, which is a state primary, was going to be open to Republicans and Democrats. And the Republican Party of Nevada said, no, we want just Republicans to choose who the Republican nominee is. We don't want this to be open to Democrats and independents. So they're doing a caucus on Thursday instead of the primary. And they told any participant in the Republican presidential campaign that if you participate in this primary that we're not participating in, you won't get any delegates. We're going to be given delegates to the convention in our caucus on Thursday. And so all of the candidates said, okay, fine, we'll participate in the caucus, except for one, Nikki Haley. You see, I think Nikki Haley wanted the headline, Haley wins the Nevada primary, even though it literally would mean nothing because you don't get any delegates. But I think she just wanted the PR. She wanted the headline. So Nikki Haley was the only person on the ballot in Nevada yesterday. Well, actually, that's not exactly true. You had two choices as a voter. You had Nikki Haley or none of the above. And the results are in, and we're calling this one for none of the above. That's right. Nikki Haley ran in the Nevada primary last night, unopposed, and she lost to anybody but Nikki Haley. That's just sad. It wasn't even close. That probably hurts her chances to be the new chairwoman of the Republican National Committee. Let's turn to Jennifer Van Laar. We just mentioned she's our managing editor at Red State, and she had a great breakdown of what led up to this moment. Here's the timeline, and this is partly her exclusive analysis showing the millions spent by the RNC back in December of 22 on private jets, limos, luxury retreats, Broadway shows, because that's how you win a presidential election and a majority in the House and the Senate. You take a bunch of people to see Wicked. Rada's people hit back hard, including Susie Wiles, claiming that my reporting was off base, not complete. But they were wrong. She debunked, Jennifer Van Laar did, all of the claims. In fact, everything that Jen said in these articles, nobody has been able to prove any inaccuracies in them. Even after she won the very hotly contested re-election for chairwoman, the RNC was fixated on marginalizing all of the writing that Jen was doing over at Red State. In fact, in one of the somebody had obtained an audio from one of the calls that the RNC conducted where they called Jennifer Van Laar out by name and said that all of her reporting was bogus. But of course, we here at Town Hall stand by everything that she did there. They haven't been able to show anything. Meanwhile, fundraising cratered. They'd shut down 75% of their Hispanic outreach centers. Also, there's no budget really for them in the 2024 RNC budget passed last week. So no Hispanic outreach in a presidential election year when the Republican Party and Donald Trump in particular has been making great strides with the Hispanic community and Hispanic vote. And then, of course, last week's report that we highlighted here absolutely got people murmuring, muttering, and even talking out loud at the RNC winter meetings. This all led to this latest debacle for Ronna Romney McDaniel, where we're now getting these rumors that she's going to step down. Jack Posobiec now is reporting that, according to a senior D.C. Republican, the one thing that they're really concerned about is a deep forensic audit of the RNC by whoever replaces her. So she might be involved in the negotiations over who that person might be. The temporary chair of the RNC, it looks like, is going to be the current state chairman of North Carolina. He'll fill that slot until they can actually have a proper replacement for Ronna Romney McDaniel. And as I said, it'll probably be Donald Trump making that decision. And of course, I'm just kidding. It's a terrible job for Nikki Haley. And since Nikki Haley just lost to literally anybody but Nikki Haley, I doubt she's going to be the best person or even considered for the job. But can I make a humble suggestion to President Trump and to the powers that be at the Republican National Committee? Because they need to make a decision, and they need to make a decision pretty quickly. If Ronna McDaniel really is going to be stepping down imminently, we need to have somebody competent in that position who knows how to handle money, who inspires people to donate, and knows how to manage things, knows how to run things. This is a presidential election year. This is a Senate majority election year. This is a keep our house and grow our house majority year. This is a year where governorships are up and state legislatures are up. We've got a convention that needs to be planned in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. There's a lot to get done in 2024, and we can't languish and just sort of make it up as we go along. The planning for the convention process is happening right now. And you can't go without a chairperson. You can't go without a competent person at the helm. So my humble suggestion, well, let's go back to that debate night I just mentioned, the one down in Miami. It was the third debate. It was on NBC News. And Ronna Romney McDaniel, the chairwoman of the RNC, actually suddenly became an issue for the candidates to debate. Do you remember this moment?
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, and we've got Kristen Welker here, do you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you, the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed on this network for years, was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
I mean, that was a beautiful moment. You remember it well. I remember it well. Sometimes if I'm feeling down, I go back and watch that clip again to see Vivek Ramaswamy tell it like it is and take it not only to Ronna McDaniel, who was sitting in the front row of the theater that night, but also to the debate moderator, to the media, Kristen Welker, and the NBC News moderator. Let's face it. The Republican National Committee needs a new chairperson, needs to breathe new life into the entire organization. They need someone who is on Donald Trump's side and will actually work to support the presumptive nominee. We need somebody who understands money and finances to fix the broken budget and the broken financial situation at the committee. We need someone who will inspire fundraising and inspire voters, and who will tell it like it is and do media appearances where he takes no crap. I think you see where I'm going here. Everyone's trying to figure out how Vivek Ramaswamy fits into the big picture here in the Trump campaign. Maybe he'll be the chief of staff. Maybe he'll be the press secretary. Maybe he'll be the secretary of commerce. How about Vivek for chairman of the RNC, like starting right now? What sweet poetic justice would it be that just 3 months ago, Vivek Ramaswamy calls on Ronna McDaniel to come up on the debate stage and resign. 3 months later, she does finally resign. And now you put Vivek into that spot. I think he'd be incredibly effective. I think the Republicans would be lucky to have him. I think it makes perfect sense. That's why I think Republicans probably won't do it. If you believe the 2020 presidential election was handled in the most extraordinary, unprecedented, and frankly kind of shady way, you're 100% right. There's no denying the fact that the election of 2020 was conducted in a way unlike any other presidential election in American history. Now, many will blame the pandemic for that, and we had to take certain protocols because of the virus, although now we know we didn't really have to take those protocols, right? I mean, the reason why there were so many mail-in ballots and drop-off in the ballot box ballots was because we were told that people couldn't stand in line shoulder to shoulder in a polling place because that would be bad for the virus. And now even Anthony Fauci admits that the whole 6-foot rule was just made up. He doesn't even know where it came from. And that's the very rule that forced the election to be conducted in such a shady, suspicious, and frankly unfair way, with all of the ballot drop-offs and the mail-in ballots and ballots that were counted that in any other election year never would have been counted and validated. That's just the truth. Now, that can all be true, and you can still think that Joe Biden won the election fair and square. It can all be true, and you can still think that the election wasn't stolen or rigged or whatever words you want to use. But you can't deny the reality that that election was conducted in a way that was completely outside of every basic norm that we've had here in America. And if you believe that, then you will really want to see what Mollie Hemmingway, Fox News contributor and editor of The Federalist, had to say under oath today in the House of Representatives. She was testifying, and the next 4 minutes of her testimony about the reality of the 2020 election is an absolute must-see. And frankly, it's a must share. Send this video around to everybody on your Facebook page, on X, on Instagram, on YouTube, wherever it is you share things, because every word of this has to be seen and heard.
The American system of self-governance is under attack. Instead of an election day where everyone votes at the same time and with the same full set of information, votes are counted quickly and everyone promptly knows and trusts the outcome, we now have lengthy election seasons that can last months prior to and even after Election Day. The situation is so absurd that we have presidential and gubernatorial debates weeks after some people have already voted. Instead of having total security and a verifiable chain of custody for ballots being issued, cast, and counted, we flood addresses across the country with tens of millions of unsupervised mail-in ballots months ahead of elections, frequently to locations from which voters, if they're even alive, have long since moved. Instead of having election administration that is rigorously nonpartisan and impartial under the law, we have allowed the private takeover of government election offices by partisan oligarchs and their armies of activists who use those offices and their authorities to tilt the election toward favored candidates. Instead of voters being able to vote for the candidate of their choice, powerful interests backed by wealthy oligarchs are working to remove the most popular candidate and the ruling party's chief opponent from the ballot in a move reminiscent of Soviet Russia. And if that weren't enough, instead of the top candidates chosen by the people being able to fully engage in a vigorous campaign heading into an election, we have one side actively attempting to throw its opponent in prison and bankrupt his family, again, reminiscent of Soviet Russia. Instead of a system of rule of law that gives Americans the same rights and due process, the Department of Justice and other partisan actors are prosecuting their opposition, whether powerful or lowly, and doing so in places where partisan juries will ensure a quick conviction. Instead of a free and independent press that shares news and information to help inform voters, we have a press that is almost exclusively the arm of one political party and is so corrupt that it is willing to perpetrate hoax after hoax against opposition party members. Instead of a vibrant public square where Americans can debate issues and express their strongly held views, we have an elaborate censorship industrial complex where the government works hand in hand with tech oligarchs to suppress and blacklist debate on all the important issues that contribute to election outcomes. This is something I know firsthand because our government worked with tech companies to censor me for my election reporting. Allowing just one of these attacks to infect our electoral system would be a crisis. Allowing all of them at the same time is an existential threat to our system of self-government. In my best-selling book on how election administration has been co-opted by groups seeking political power, I reported on a new phenomenon in the 2020 election that has already severely eroded trust and needs to be addressed decisively. In the last presidential election, nonprofit groups with very strong ties to the Democrat Party and funded by one of the world's wealthiest and most powerful men, Facebook founder Mark Zuckerberg, took over government election offices, most notably in the Democrat areas of swing states. Since then, the efforts by partisans to further infiltrate government election offices to ensure favorable outcomes have only increased. I look forward to answering questions about how the private oligarch takeover of elections is a threat to our system of self-government.
This is why we love Mollie Hemmingway. I know you do too, because she's one of your fan favorites there at Fox News Channel whenever she's on. It's all clear. It's all concise. It's all indisputable. It's all backed up. And yeah, all the crazy stuff that happened in the 2020 election, we're now seeing repeat itself, but then add to that Joe Biden utilizing his Justice Department and other local states attorneys, Commonwealth attorneys, district attorneys, utilizing local law to try to prosecute the man who is the overwhelming popular choice to be the nominee for the opposition party to the president of the United States. And yeah, it does look like an authoritarian regime. It does look like Banana Republic. And nobody can deny that. Nobody. It was a great opening statement and really a great overall testimony from Mollie Hemmingway. Here's what I want you to do. I know you have people in your life who call you an election denier. I know you have people in your life who think that you're a conspiracy theorist because you agree that this last presidential campaign was insane and it wasn't fair. And the fact that we now, on a regular basis, go days, if not weeks, until we know the final tabulation of votes. When in a third world country where they use paper ballots, they know hours after the polls closed who won the election. You've got people in your life who think you're nuts because you raise your hand and say, this isn't right. We can do better. You've got people in your life who think that you're a criminal because you dare to say that in the United States of America, the day after an election, win or lose, we should have a system where everybody walks away thinking, well, at least it was done fair and square. We should have a system in this country where the day after election day, we don't have people claiming that the entire election was stolen and a fraud. And we've had that, both Republicans and Democrats, since 2000. For the past 24 years, that's what we've had. And we should and we can do better. You think that, and you've got people in your life who think that you're nuts because of it. Can you do me a favor? Can you send them this video? Send them this video, post it on your page and tag them on it, or just send it in an email or a direct message to them and say, you want to know why I think what I think? This is why I think what I think. And just wait for their response. I have a hunch they won't actually give you any responses on the facts or the merits of these arguments because they can't. But at the very least, finally, through Mollie Hemmingway, you'll have a voice here. And maybe that person, maybe in the back of their mind, they'll understand just a little bit about why you believe what you believe. And maybe even they'll start to get it. That's all she wrote today, but thank you so much for watching. We appreciate the size of audience. It keeps growing day after day after day. If you're new to what we're doing here and you've just subscribed, you rock. Thanks a lot. Share this video, tell a friend. We'll see you next time. In the meantime, I'm Larry O'Connor. Call me Larry.